Hey gang, I am Joe Edelman and welcome to The Last Frame Live. We will continue the gear conversation tonight and I'll tell you why I chose Sony cameras and why I have a love-hate relationship with that brand. Also, I promised to do a Q&A before we wrap up, so start typing. What questions can you have? I'll do my best to answer all of them in the next 60 minutes. So you know the drill. If you're watching live, please leave me a note in the chat. Let me know you're here and where you're watching from. Already, I got John from down in Nashville. Peter's here in England. Lynn in New York. I got David in San Diego. Andre is in Mexico. Ty in Jersey. I got Nicola in Italy. We got people from all over the place. Ron is here from Thursday in Australia. Peace Valley Audio right down the road in DC. Alan's here from Virginia. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And if you're watching the replay, no sweat. Drop a comment below the video. Let me know that you were here. All of you, you're part of a growing global community of photographers in over 100 countries who tune in to watch The Last Frame every week. And for that, I'm going to work really hard to help you with your photography in the next 60 minutes. And you know it would help a lot more people learn about The Last Frame if you could do me a solid. Hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the video to other photographers. And of course, while you're there, feel free to hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live on YouTube right now. Or go ahead and share that link, lastframe.live, that I just dropped in the chat window for you, okay? Twitter, Facebook, they're the fastest way to get the word out. So just two things. I told you about these last week, but I'm going to tell you again, and I'm going to tell you for a couple weeks to come because they're exciting and they're kind of a cool deal, right? April of next year, you will have an opportunity to spend an entire week with me, 5 days at the Texas School, just outside of Dallas, Texas. I'm going to be doing a program called Do Different, Be Different, Create Images that Stand Out. So this is a 5-day program, Monday through Friday, all day. And we're going to have models. We're going to be shooting. We'll be working with the makeup artist. We're going to do mostly studio work, but we'll also do some location stuff. We'll do some post-processing. We're going to do it all. Deep dive into the kind of creative portraiture and lighting that I do. So if you've been looking for an opportunity to learn it in more than what you can get in like a 3-hour, mini workshop or a 90-minute presentation, this is your opportunity. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to drop that link in the chat. You'll also find it below the video in the description. And then backing the calendar up a little bit to January, I am going to be presenting at ImagingUSA. Incredible lineup of speakers. I don't know if they're done adding them all. They may still be adding some more. My buddy Will Cadena is going to be speaking. A lot of great people. I will be doing a presentation that's all about color and color theory and using gels. This is going to be a 90-minute deep dive with the idea of creating bolder images. I thought that was going to, there it is. Creative color. It's easy, it's powerful, it's emotional. And if you're trying to make money, it sells, which is important, okay? So our top, and that's it for my announcements. I'm not gonna dig, through a whole bunch of other stuff for you. I want to get into the discussion. Why I have a love-hate relationship with my Sony cameras. I have 3 of them. I have 2 here in front of me, okay? But before I dig in, I want to address a question that has been asked several times in the last few weeks. I always said I wouldn't do gear videos. What's up with the sudden string of gear videos? Because there's going to be more of them, right? So look, you've heard me talk about trends and following the crowd. My gear videos aren't your usual, this is amazing how great this camera is, and here's why you should buy it. Not at all. My videos are going through my kit, the stuff that I use. We're going to dig in, as we have been, to the hows and whys. I choose that gear. And more importantly, in each category of gear, tonight, camera bodies, what I would encourage you to do when it comes time for you to buy similar items. In other words, these are not your normal gearhead videos. For you folks, my videos are going to be boring. For the people who spend their money wisely and want gear that will help them improve, you will find value in these conversations. It's also important to note that none of these videos are sponsored or will be sponsored or paid for. This is gear that I own and I paid for it. So that said, help me out. Here's your chance to steer this conversation. Let me know what you want me to cover next week. I was thinking about lighting, maybe my choice in strobes and LEDs, or I could do modifiers first and then do lights the following week. Or perhaps there's something else that you're looking at and looking for some advice on. Type it in the chat below or the comments below the video, and enough people pick the same thing, that will be the next topic. All right, so cameras. You know that I have spent the best part of 7 years, the last 7 years, happily showing the world the capabilities of micro four thirds cameras, and just over 3 of those years as an ambassador for Olympus. During that time, I had high quality images published in magazines, on magazine covers, and on billboards. I was able to prove time and time again that it isn't the gear that makes the picture. It is solid photographic skills combined with good equipment that has excellent features. Think about that. Solid photographic skills combined with good equipment that has excellent features. But look, things change. The world evolves, right? And Olympus decided to invest their future in nature, wildlife, astrophotography, and macro photography, which leaves very little room for a people shooter like myself. So the reason for me changing? Sorry, no drama. It was a simple business decision to change camera brands. I made the decision at the same time to drop all of my sponsorships so that I would have the ability to talk about all brands of gear honestly, and so that I could share with you some of the inner workings of the industry to help you better understand what you're paying for the next time you buy a piece of gear. So that's the switch, but let's talk about the choice. I began my research late last year, 2021. I handled different cameras. I tested the ones that looked kind of promising. Certainly right out of the box, I considered returning to Nikon, which was the brand that I had happily used for most of my career. However, they were still lagging behind the rest of the marketplace because of their later start with mirrorless. Their cameras are great, but also I honestly wasn't comfortable with the ergonomics, the feel, and the layout of the Nikon cameras. Canon digital cameras have always been a no-go for me. Too big, too heavy, and I've never liked the physical design of Canon gear. That doesn't make it bad, it just makes it unsuitable for me, right? So we don't have to defend any of our brands here, okay? Fuji, they've got a beautiful system, and I'm not opposed to APS-C, but honestly, I don't like the feel of the Fuji bodies in my hands, so that comes down to an ergonomic choice also. I lost a little bit of faith in Panasonic when they decided to split their resources between micro four thirds and full frame, not to mention that they are a company that is even more diversified than Sony. Pentax hasn't moved into mirrorless yet, and Leica, well, it's Leica, right? Who has that kind of money? So that left me with Sony, which is kind of a company that I love to hate. All right, maybe hate's a strong word, too strong a word, right? So let's go with a camera company that I don't necessarily trust. Now, you may remember I used Sony briefly in between Nikon and Olympus. When I was really getting the itch to make that switch to mirrorless cameras, I had tried out Sony. The problem was at the time, cameras were great. They were very nice. They were much bigger and much heavier than they are today. But they had no lens lineup at the time. They literally, I believe, had like 4 lenses of their own. You know, everybody was using adapters and putting Canon lenses on, or worse yet, Nikon lenses on the Sony bodies. And it was not pretty. And I'm not a big fan of adapters, right? None of that's an issue now. My trust issues with Sony are, and I'm probably one of the few people that have these kind of trust issues with them, but it's because cameras are a very small part of Sony's overall business. And the company has a track record of very quickly and without warning, just simply dropping product lines that don't perform. Think Betamax. I'm older, so I remember that. More importantly, I honestly feel that they're lazy with their design and development. But it may also be that they're just greedy. So as of today's date, right? So here we are at the end of September, beginning of October 2022, Sony has 10 different full frame camera bodies in their product lineup listed on their website. They actually have 13, but 3 of them are listed as discontinued. So they have 10 bodies. Many of those cameras overlap features, and a lot of them, they manage to leave out 1 or 2 features that create a situation where many Sony users, including myself now, are left feeling that they need 2 different camera bodies to do all of the work that they want to do. Now, look, please, before the Sony fanboys and fangirls jump all over me, let's clear up a few things. I want to be really clear, right? I admire Sony for what it has developed with its cameras. I do sincerely feel that they are best-in-class digital cameras in the marketplace today. And it would seem like the industry in general agrees with that. But come on now, as consumers who spend a lot of money for these cameras, that doesn't mean that they get a free pass just because they sell more than anybody else. We should still expect them to do better. You know, if you look back not that many years, to the credit of Sony's marketing team, they have managed to create kind of an Apple-like mentality around their gear. And the faithful rush out and blindly purchase the latest and the greatest as soon as it's available. I honestly would be much happier with fewer camera options that were much more feature-rich, which was something that I grew accustomed to and was spoiled with as an Olympus user. Having to choose between a camera that's focused on ISO sensitivity at the cost of resolution, or a camera that's focused on resolution at the expense of ISO sensitivity, that's an opportunity for Sony to make even more money at our expense. Now, of course, they do have the hybrid models, which force you to give up a little bit of both on both sides of the fence, right? Now, for those of you that may not be aware, the way you tell the design preference of the various Sony models is the letter R or the letter S or the absence of both of those letters in the model name of the camera. So models with an R, like the A7R4, these are the higher resolution models. The R stands for resolution. In this case, it's 61 megapixels. The cameras with an S, like the A7S III, they're designed to perform better at higher ISOs. The S stands for sensitivity. And then the models with no letter, those are the hybrid cameras like this A7 IV. They're designed to perform well for both stills and videos, and they're referred to as the hybrid cameras. Now, that little tidbit of information makes it much clearer which Sony cameras you should pay attention to based on what you shoot and what your specific needs are. But come on now, you Sony users, admit it. Even you Sony users, quite a few of you didn't know what I just explained. And do you see any of that information in any of Sony's product marketing? Of course you don't. Instead of spreading their camera releases out, Sony releases updated models more often than any other brand. Not because of revolutionary feature differences that are game changers, but because of incremental increases. Just like Apple does with their phones. The difference here is that these increases are much more expensive than phones, which ain't cheap in the first place, right? And from one year to the next, they don't change enough to significantly impact your photography just by switching to the latest model. All right, two last big complaints about my Sony gear, and then we'll get into the good stuff, okay? And there's a couple little things along the way that I'll mention. But I have found that both the A7R IV, this is my studio camera, and the A7 IV, my location/sports camera, kind of the everything else camera. That's why you'll notice no strap. This never leaves the studio. Strap, this camera gets carried around, right? And I have two of these. Both of these cameras need quite a bit of customizing out of the box to achieve some of the advertised features. An example is the 10 frames per second. Neither of these bodies is going to shoot 10 frames per second easily right out of the box. You've got to change a bunch of settings. You've also got to make sure you're using specific memory cards, yada, yada, yada. And try as I might, I was not able to find a clear path to achieve that 10 frames per second in the camera manuals. Fortunately, there were sports shooters on YouTube who had shared their custom settings and how they got it there. And it's quite a few settings you're going to tweak to make it work efficiently. And then last but not least, the viewfinder in the A7 IV. And this is a little bit of a double-edged sword. I'm going to talk more about this in a minute, but it's very slow. It has quite a bit of lag. And I'm not saying that the Sony A7 IV is a bad choice for sports photography, because actually I know quite a few photographers use it. I've been using it for sports photography and actually really enjoying it, but I'm a little bit of a nerd. The reason being, there's a learning curve. If you're going to specialize in sports, I would tell you right out of the box, look at the Sony A9 or better yet the A1, because you're not going to have that kind of lag. You're going to have a more real-time viewfinder. But the problem is, the A1, you're looking at a price tag of over $6,000, right? That's ridiculous. It just is. So for me, let's switch gears. What about the good stuff? What do I love about my Sony A7R IVA and my two A7 IVs? So let's go ahead and talk about something that I've talked about all the time as an Olympus shooter. The small size and weight. Yeah, seriously. Both of these camera bodies, both of them, are only slightly larger than the OM system, OM1, or even the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark III, which is the last Olympus camera that I used. The A7R IVA, the studio camera, 61 megapixels, weighs in at just 1 pound, 7.5 ounces. The A7 IV weighs in at 1 pound, 7.3 ounces. The OM system OM1 weighs in at 1.3 pounds. So we're looking at an approximate 4-ounce difference. And the bodies are fractionally larger, literally, not exaggerating. Now, there are some minor body differences between these two models, but overall, the ergonomics are, for the most part, the same and honestly excellent. The grip size and the depth of the grip are fantastic for my hands. Doesn't mean it will be for your hands, right? I forgot another complaint before I get too far. The lens release. I find the lens release is really tough to get to. I also have to hold the camera kind of rather awkwardly because it's buried down there, okay? Now, fortunately, I don't need to switch lenses in a hurry very often, so it's not like a big deal breaker. It's just more like an annoyance. Now, like my previous Olympus cameras, both of these Sony models are highly customizable, but both of them have very different menus, okay? One of them you scroll across the top, the other one you scroll down the side. It's like, come on, Sony, really? At least make your menus similar. They both require you also to spend a good bit of effort to customize them, to really be able to take advantage of the complete feature set. And look, gang, I'm not doing any really specialized shooting here. So I'm talking about a lot of the basic features. So both of these cameras, high ISO and low noise capabilities, are fantastic. But let me be clear, high ISO for me is about 6,000 ISO. I have little to no need to ever go beyond that. I have seen a lot of images posted online that claim to have not been processed through noise software, with the A7 IV running at about 24,000 ISO. And of course there's some noise, but it's very clean noise, meaning it looks like grain. And overall, I gotta tell you, for ISO that high, it is doggone impressive. It really is. Now, the last two selling points for me with these cameras, the autofocus capabilities for both cameras, especially the A7 IV, which is the one that I use for sports. The tracking ability is fantastic. And then last but not least, dynamic range. I find it to be incredible. It's one of the things that I really appreciate about the Sony color engine. And in addition to that, one of the things that I appreciate about the Sony color engine and processor in general is that I find the colors to be very, what I would call faithful, much like what I got from Olympus, okay? It's commonly known, Fuji tends to run a little blue or cold. Canon tends to have a little bit more contrast. And look, that's great if it fits your style. And of course, you can alter the color and the contrast in post, but I appreciate the natural feel of the Sony files right out of the camera. So the important question before we get into my advice for you, have these two cameras improved my photography? Yes and no. So for my studio work, the A7R IV, it's a beautiful camera with large, very large, 61 megapixel files that are great for the kind of work that I do. Pair it with the Tamron 70-180, incredible versatility. But the question is, has this camera made my images better? No, not at all. The A7 IV, in my mind, excellent camera for location work and sports. It generates 33 megapixel files. Has this made my work better? My sports photography? Yes. The tracking capabilities of the autofocus ensure more tack sharp frames for sports sequences. Look, Olympus, amazing autofocus, but tracking doesn't compare to this. Just doesn't, right? So that's a specialized feature. Oddly enough, as much as I complained about it before, I also told you I kind of nerd out about this a little bit. The slow viewfinder has actually made me relearn my skill set for anticipation, which is important not just for sports, but any kind of people photography. The bonus with that, I can rely on fewer frames per second and count on my eye to capture the decisive moment. My oldest grandson plays baseball. When I'm photographing a baseball player at bat, I'm usually not firing off more than 2 frames on any swing, and I'm able to consistently capture the ball in frame, either right before the bat or immediately after the bat has hit the ball, consistently. So that's a skill set that takes practice. There's that dirty word, right? Now, would I recommend either of these two cameras to you? It depends. It depends on your skill set, and it depends on what you intend to shoot. So that brings us to my top tips for selecting your next camera, and also importantly, when to do it. In fact, somebody messaged me in my TOGKnowledge community tonight talking about, well, I've been thinking about switching from Sony to Canon. That's like one of the worst reasons to change camera brands. Nothing in that statement had a legitimate need, right? So let's actually start out with the what not to do when you are looking at buying new cameras or switching cameras, okay? Don't buy a new camera because it's the latest model, otherwise known as FOMO, fear of missing out. Please don't buy a new camera because some YouTuber said it's great. No. And remember, most importantly, dead serious, a new camera will not, never, ever make you a better photographer. Only you can do that. So what should you be doing? So the first thing is, consider these things. What do you like to photograph? What genres of photography, right? Because obviously shooting landscapes or shooting astrophotography requires a different gear set and potentially a different camera, depending on your brand, than shooting sports and wildlife, right? Another thing that you should be considering, do you have budget limitations? Don't overspend, don't put yourself in debt. Be realistic about what you're doing, okay? Used gear is a great option in today's marketplace. Next thing that you should be considering, what is your current skill level and what do you hope to achieve with the camera that you are considering purchasing? And then the last one is, what do you do with your images? Meaning, do you print them? Do they go on billboards? Do they go into printed publications? Are they just seen online? Which is not a bad thing, by the way. But what do you do with those images? Now, with the answers to those questions, now you can begin honest research. And please don't shortcut this process. The time that you invest in this research will pay you huge dividends in the long run. Start out by speaking with photographers who use the camera that you're considering buying. Believe me, that's essential. And look, in today's social media world, you can find people online who use it even if you don't know somebody locally, right? There are Facebook groups for pretty much every camera brand and model. Join a few of them. Observe, read, and most importantly, ask questions. Next, compare the camera's specs, all the cameras that you have on your short list, right? All the specifications, all the details. All this information is easy to find on the camera brand's websites or at photo retailers, especially the larger retailers like B&H and Adorama, but even most of your local retailers, if they have a website, they have the camera specs posted. And better yet, let's take that one a step further. Download the manual for the camera or cameras that you are considering and sincerely take the time to compare the differences in how the cameras are set up and how they operate. That is time that will pay off. Next, touch it, taste it, feel it, use it. Okay, leave out the taste it part, but this is important. Seriously, you're looking at a significant expense here. Why would you buy it based on information that you found online or, for that matter, someone else's recommendation? I mean, what if their hands are bigger or smaller than yours? The camera may not have the same ergonomic feel for you. What if they shoot in a different style or a different way or a different genre? I promise you, for all my years in photography, one of the leading decision-making factors for me has always been ergonomics. I need the camera to fit in my hands. I need to be able to practice with that camera to the point that it becomes an extension of my thought process so that I don't have to think about what I'm doing with it. Another essential part of this process, trying the camera before you buy it. If you live in a locale where you can rent from a local photo retailer or an online service like lensrentals.com, do it. I mean, currently you can rent a Sony A7R4 61 megapixel camera for 7 days for less than $200. At a minimum, go and visit your local retailer and take an SD card with you. Shoot some images in the store and then go home and review them. Worst case scenario, purchase it from a retailer with a 30-day return policy so that you have the time to test the camera and change your mind if it's not the right fit for you. Obviously, during that 30 days, handle with care, treat it like your life depends on it. Otherwise, you own it, regardless of whether you like it, right? So how do you know when you should upgrade or change your gear? Well, if you have unlimited funds and you enjoy new toys, you should go ahead and upgrade as soon as the newest model hits the market, if that pleases you. But if you're serious about learning photography and developing a skill set that will allow you to create great images consistently, then regardless of how much money you have, you should only upgrade when you need to. Because the minute you upgrade, remember, that camera is no longer a thoughtless extension of your body. You've got to relearn, okay? So for me, the need is determined by things like, well, actually, let's go back to the beginning of tonight. Business. The business decision is what made me change from Olympus to Sony. But for most of you, it's not going to be that kind of a decision. So the decisions that I'm going to look at are, is my camera on its last leg or has it already died, right? And remember, just like many other pieces of technology, including computers, upgrading to one level below the latest one can save you a ton of money while still allowing you to meet your needs. Has the manufacturer discontinued support for your model? Well, if this is the case, first of all, congratulations. You are definitely not a geartographer, and you've likely gotten your money's worth from that camera. Next on my list, are there features in the new camera that you're considering that will streamline or allow you to significantly improve your photography? Is your current gear making it difficult or impossible to keep up with your creative needs? Now, that's one of those ones where you got to be honest with yourself. Don't let GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, or FOMO, fear of missing out, creep into that decision. Understand, increasing megapixels at this point, and when I say this point, I mean where we are in the history of digital photography, it is not going to improve your photography. Faster frame rates do not improve your photography unless you shoot sports and wildlife. So remember, separate FOMO from actual need. And look, even if you're not making money with your camera, you should be able to justify the ROI, the return on the investment, before you spend the money to upgrade. One last tip for you, and then we're done. I'll take your questions. I saw there's some good comments and questions coming in here. Type away if you're still here. One last tip, I mentioned renting gear to try it before you buy it, right? Sometimes the best solution for wanting, as opposed to needing, right, a piece of equipment is to ask yourself, how often am I really going to use this, right? So certainly, maybe it would be cool to have, this lens or this camera that does this. But in reality, I may only do that twice a year, 3 times a year. Professional photographers will routinely rent a piece of gear that they may only use a few times a year. That cost gets passed on to the client, and then it eliminates the need to purchase something that will be difficult to see a return on. This same concept can still benefit amateur photographers. Certainly ROI is not a part of the conversation, but the reasonable cost of renting something for a particular trip, let's say, a vacation or an event, it can save you thousands of dollars over purchasing it and then not really using it, because just like a used car, the minute you open the box, the value starts to go down. So that, folks, is my advice for you. We'll be back next week with another piece of gear out of my kit and my advice on how you should make your selections. And of course, I'll share with you why I chose the gear that I did. So let's chat. What have you guys been up to? What are you struggling with? How can I help you with your photography? So I'm going to head back here to the chat and scroll back a little bit. And let's just see what we've got in here. Larry's asking me, what is your experience with the fast action photos with the A7R4? Larry, not bad, but I don't take it out and use it for sports. I use the A7 IV for sports. At the end of the day, The 61 megapixel for me was kind of because I could. I'm not going to lie. After everything I've told you guys, I'm going to be really honest. It was kind of because I could from a business standpoint. I can justify that for the composite type images and the beauty images that I do. Plus, if you followed me for very long, when I made the switch to Olympus, one of the things that I talked about is that it actually cut down my retouching time on images because you don't have nearly as much resolution. Now, that's a double-edged sword, right? It's nice that you save time, but at the same time, that also means there's certain retouching and even compositing that's very challenging to do, and even that you can't do. So it does tweak your style and your creative choices a little bit. So being able to go back to the 61 megapixel full frame, it's really opened it up for me to, do more of that work, which I enjoy. And it is kind of a part of where my style, was. So that's why I made that choice. But for everything else, keep in mind, before I switched over to Olympus, actually before I switched to Sony the first time, I was using the Nikon D810, which was what, 31 megapixel, I believe. So, and I was very happy with the megapixels on that camera, full frame. So now having the 33 megapixels in the A7R is great. The 10 frames a second is awesome. The challenge that you run into with shooting sports with the A7R4 at 61 megapixels, good luck clearing that buffer. So if you need any extended, bursts, you're going to be out of luck with that camera, period, right? If you're just going to pop off 1 or 2 or 3 frames at a time and to give the camera a chance to catch up, that's fine. But beyond that, I wouldn't consider that a sports camera. I have taken it out to one Little League baseball game. It was actually before I picked up the A7 IVs. From a quality standpoint, it was great. As long as I respected its buffer limitations, it performed fine. I did not use it in that particular game in situations where I needed it to do tracking. I can tell you just from the tests that I've done here, in my studio and just, playing around with the 2 cameras, there's no comparison in tracking capabilities from the A7R4 to the A7 IV. The A7 IV is hands down the winner with tracking, especially with the latest firmware upgrade that Sony put out. The eye tracking, autofocus, and tracking in general is just amazing with that camera. Really is. Okay. Peace Valley, I'd love to see videos on umbrellas and softboxes, modifiers. Okay, cool. Corey is saying lighting and modifiers. All right. Also using off-camera speed lights. Okay. Sean, why do you want or need mirrorless over a DSLR? Oh, Sean, really? It's interesting, man. I'll give you credit for holding that line. I would actually flip it around because it sounds like you're a DSLR shooter and you like a DSLR. I would actually say, why the heck are you hanging onto your DSLR? But let me give you the answer to your question. It's a very simple reason. Keep in mind, I've been shooting since 1971, right? So I started out shooting with film with SLR cameras where you sent your film away and you waited 7 days to find out just how much you suck, right? And then along comes digital, which is amazing, but you still have to press the button and chimp, okay? Certainly a major improvement. Can't really complain about that until this mirrorless technology comes out. And now with mirrorless technology, suddenly what you have in your cameras is, I'm going to use a phrase from the coding world, especially the HTML coders, WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. So when I'm out shooting a baseball game with these cameras or whatever I am shooting, I'm seeing the finished exposure in real time as I press the button. The only thing that I ever need to chimp for is to see if I caught a specific moment. But if I'm shooting events or anything like that where I'm, hustling and I got to keep going, I'm seeing my exposure as I shoot. So there's never a concern. Do I have the right exposure? Do I need to make a change? Do I need to tweak it? It's perfect as I shoot it. And if it's not perfect, it's because I didn't pay attention. So there's nothing wrong with DSLRs, and there are still shooters whose needs are met with a DSLR. But look, the reality of it is the writing's on the wall. Um, who knows what Pentax is going to do? I mean, they're still a DSLR only company. Canon has already made the public announcement. They're dropping DSLRs. They're not going to continue research and development and will basically sell out what they have. Rumors are hot and heavy right now. Nikon has made that decision to do the same. I guarantee you they will if they haven't already, but they just haven't announced it. And they're still kind of, trying to push back actually saying that, and which means they probably have a lot of stock of DSLRs yet that they want to sell out, right, and get rid of before the sales completely fall off the shelf with that. But, Sean, the world evolves, technology evolves, evolution is a great thing. Remember, how that worked out for dinosaurs, right? Don't be a dinosaur. So it's not that you got to rush out and buy something right now, but pay attention. And so that's the one thing I do want to be clear about now that I kind of, really went heavy on why a mirrorless camera. For any of you that are still shooting DSLRs, good for you. Same rules apply. Everything that I just told you, right? That argument about, companies discontinuing them, the world evolving, all that doesn't mean, oh my God, I need to start looking at a mirrorless. No, you're going to start looking at a mirrorless when you have the need to make a change. But I would aggressively encourage you, this is my advice, opinion, okay? I would aggressively encourage any of you, if you are DSLR shooters and you are looking in the near future at needing to make a change, upgrade your camera, you've got to kind of look at one of two things. That means the fact that you're a DSLR shooter, you probably have quite a few lenses. Switching over to mirrorless is going to require you either purchasing all new lenses also, or it's going to require you using adapters. I personally hate adapters. So you've got to kind of weigh things out, right? You've got to look at your lens lineup. You've got to look at the condition of them, all of those things, and decide, okay, so maybe I pick up another body, or maybe I pick up another used body, and I can get another 2, 3, 4 years out of that body with these lenses, and you can kind of kick the can down the road if that camera is meeting and that camera model is meeting your needs. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But I promise you, Sean, once you start working with the mirrorless, you will forget about DSLRs very, very, very quickly. But if you're happy with your DSLR and it's meeting your needs, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Okay. Let's see, Andre for the Q&A. I love people like you that focus on spending smartly rather than specs. How do you feel about hacking the firmware on cameras? Well, first of all, thank you, Andre. I would not hack the firmware at all. I know that there are some situations where people have done that for various features and various cameras. I'm not a big fan on that. I'm just not, right? I want to be able to send my cameras back to a manufacturer and get service on them. The biggest piece of advice I would give you, maybe you are very tech savvy and you have a high tolerance for that kind of experimentation, but here's the one warning that I would give you. Camera manufacturers in general have become very, for lack of a better word, they become very aggressive in the wording of their terms and conditions, not only around warranties, but also around just simply what gear they will service. Much of that language evolves around gray market purchases, but in general, also like tampered purchases, right? It's kind of like with Apple, like if you crack open an Apple MacBook, good luck at that point getting Apple to, to fix it or to, deal with it under warranty. So I would just make sure that you take a real good look at whatever it is you're thinking of tweaking the firmware on. Take a good look at that company's terms. Take a good look at what their service options are. Are there third-party service options if you run into a major problem? And so it really comes down to kind of your tolerance for risk as far as that goes. Okay. Gabe, good to see you. I hope you're doing all right down there in Miami. Sissy, my puppy, she's doing awesome. Thank you. Let's see here. Where are we at here? Grant Palmer, amen. Ergonomics is key. It absolutely is, man. Ergonomics is huge. And look, I'll be honest with you guys. When, I started doing my research for this switch away from Olympus, that was a big stressor for me. Sony was the last camera brand that I looked at. I'm not kidding. I looked at the Nikons because the Nikon cameras, by the way, to be clear, the Z series, they're also impressively small. Right? They're nowhere near as big as Nikons used to be at all. So finally, we do have some camera brands, some full frame camera brands that are getting back to being realistic about the size and weight of cameras. Now, the problem that exists, full frame manufacturers like Sony and Nikon with their f1.4, f1.8, f2 lenses, those lenses are still massive and huge, right? So they're saving some size and weight on the camera bodies, but the lenses are still ridiculous, which was a big part of my choice to go Tamron. But as far as body size, Nikon actually has some really functional body sizes. I just don't like the ergonomics of the new cameras. So Sony was kind of the last one, that I looked at because I just had it in my head from having, handled Sony 7 years ago that they were big and they were bulky. I liked what the cameras produced 7 years ago, but I just didn't like the feel of the cameras. So when I picked up the A7R4, I was very pleasantly surprised because it's super, super small, great ergonomics. But again, ergonomics, folks, is a very personal thing. So the only right or wrong in ergonomics is you, right? Because what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for you. So never take anybody's word about how something feels. You literally have to put your hands on it. That's the only way to do it, okay? Let's see, Steve Barr. I love my Ollie for the way it feels and the features. I found that I can use fast lenses at wide apertures and still get acceptable depth of field. Sure. Steve Kunder, my problem is I like cameras so much and each brand has some unique features I like. I just can't afford to play with them all. Yeah, and I hate to say it, Steve. I mean, I'm not saying this as an insulting thing in any way, but that's kind of part of that geartographer mentality. All good photography, Steve, is the art of solving problems, right? Aside from the digital aspect of photography, we did the same things with cameras and lights back in the 1980s that photographers are doing today. We overpowered the sun with lights that were a fraction of the power of the strobes that are available today. We didn't need a 600 watt second strobe. We did it with a speed light, okay? All those kinds of things. So, gear is never a replacement for solid foundational knowledge of photography. In fact, gang, seriously, I can't stress this enough. Solid foundational knowledge and skills. Those are two different things. Book knowledge is good and it's useful, but it doesn't become a skill until you try it and practice it and fail and tweak it and massage it and develop a better understanding hands-on, right? So solid skills will outweigh equipment any day. Any day. I will take skills over features. Any day. Because all the features in the world are not going to get me consistently great results. They're just not. The cameras do a much better job of that than they did 20 or 30 years ago. But it's still not enough. And it's still not enough to ensure that you are going to get great work. Because understand that, unless you're photographing technical images of products or technical images of paintings, right? There's this element of photography that has nothing to do with technology. It's called creativity. So creativity starts with an idea, a vision, a concept. That's the problem. A photographer uses the gear that they have and their skill set and their knowledge and understanding of the science of photography. They use all of that to solve the creative problem. All good photography is problem solving, okay? Let's see. Instead of shooting at maximum resolution, does it improve buffer time if you drop it down to 30 megapixels? Well, sure, but doesn't that defeat the purpose? Why would you buy a 61 megapixel camera to shoot at 33 megapixels, right? And if you're thinking the idea, well, I could use the one camera for both. Yeah, I could. But, and if I didn't do this for a living and if I didn't have the budget to be able to afford the cameras that I have, that might be a solution. But for me, I'm very happy leaving, the A7R4, that stays in the studio. That's my studio camera. It doesn't leave the studio. Anything that I'm shooting outside the studio, the A7 IVs are more than adequate, okay? Ole, how are the video capabilities of these Sonys? I do very little video at this point, but I will tell you that if you do your research, if you talk to people, and even if you try them out, you're not going to find better video capabilities. You're not going to get better video capability from Nikon or Canon, or certainly not. From a feature set standpoint, Panasonic probably has some features that the Sonys don't from a feature set standpoint, but from a quality standpoint, yeah, the Sonys are just awesome. So, Cooley, what case do I use for all the 8200s that I have? If you're talking about the case that I travel around the country with when I teach, here, let me share my screen with you. We'll go to my website. Here's how you can get the information. Go to my website. I'm going to share the link in the chat in a second. On bio, click on My Photography Gear. Here's the link. Let me grab that and put that in the chat. Coolly, there you go. If you scroll down here, or actually you can start at the top, just click on Cases, Bags, and Straps. And the Pelican 1615, it's one of the Air cases. That's the case that I have a full studio in. In that case, I have 4 light stands, 4 Godox 8200s. I travel with 4 Fresnel heads, 2 bare bulb heads, a full Magma kit, 3 wallets worth of Magma gels, also tether tools, tether cables, a tether block. When I travel, I carry transmitters for every camera brand that goes with Godox because I need them for workshops, that type of stuff. And that case is designed, it comes in 1/2 an inch smaller on the measurements, the maximum measurements for checked luggage without you having to pay oversized fees. And the gear that I put in it, 60 pounds is the maximum for most airlines. I come in at about 52.5 pounds when it's fully packed. So it meets all the requirements. Now, some airlines over the course of the last couple of years of the pandemics have dropped their maximum pound allotment to 50 pounds. So don't assume that you're okay based on what I said. I generally fly American. American allows 60 pounds, and I have no problem getting those in. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Peter Blythe, LED strobes, hybrid lighting, modifiers. Okay, cool. And all that stuff's all kind of the next couple of weeks of what's coming for sure. Sean, you are on mirrorless. You were just wondering why it seemed like I glossed over DSLR. Okay. Well, yeah. I don't see DSLR as being a relevant part of the conversation at this point. And I don't mean that as an insult to anybody. I just mean, yes, the companies are making it very clear. DSLR is not their future, which basically means it's not the future of photography, right? It doesn't mean that there won't necessarily be some companies that are selling or manufacturing DSLRs, but they're not going to be the key to what we're going to see coming up down the road. Kevin, sorry, I missed your question here. What percentage of your shots are taken with mechanical shutter versus electronic shutter? Kevin, 100% of my shots are taken with mechanical shutter. I don't really have a need for electronic shutter, and there's too much risk involved with rolling shutter if you forget to switch the camera over, that kind of thing. So, electronic shutter has its benefits, but not for my photography. Doesn't mean that it's not a great idea for other shooters, for their photography, but for the work that I shoot, there's absolutely no benefit to electronic shutter. So I do everything mechanical shutter. Okay. So let's see. I think, Tony, how are you? Good to see you. I think I got everybody here. So listen, one last thing. I've talked about this before. So let me mention this one last time before we head on out here, because things are going to change on this a little bit very, very soon. Okay. It's my TOGKnowledge learning community. In fact, let me go ahead and I'll switch over here. Okay. I know there are some of you here that still have not joined this community, right? Now, you're going to regret that decision. I'm telling you. One, because it's going to be an application process starting in a few days. Not everybody gets in. In order to be a part of the community, you have to actually participate, meaning you have to learn. Okay. So this is your opportunity to get on the ground floor. This is a very different way of learning photography online, meaning it's not a bunch of classes and it's also not social media, okay? And so far, there's no money involved. That will not be the case forever, okay? It does require, though, that you sincerely want to improve your photography, and you've got to be willing to put in some effort. So what I've been building here is a one-of-a-kind learning destination for photographers. I will share a link with you guys in the chat here. There's also a link below the video if you are interested to check it out. A couple of things. The page that it's going to take you to, please be sure to read the whole page and watch the short video that's there before you sign up with the link. And just in case you're watching this video a couple days or a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks down the road, if you go to that page and there's an application form, doesn't mean you can't get in. It just means you need to fill out the application form. And my advice to you when you fill the form out, put a little bit of effort into it. It's going to ask you some questions about your photography, about your gear, about your experience, and most importantly, what you really want to learn, why you think that this community might benefit you, okay? 1 and 2 word answers, you're not getting in. I'm sorry. Learning, folks, it takes effort. That's why you hear me push practice so much and why it's so important. So anyway, I hope to see you there. A lot of great stuff and more cool stuff coming. I'm just in the process of finishing up some programming and some other new features that we're going to add to it, but a lot of really neat stuff there. So I am going to do something that I never do. I think I've maybe done this once in like the last 5 years. I'm going to finish a couple minutes early, right? So, oh, wait a second here. Joe's got a question. We'll get to see if I can still finish early. He wants to know, will I be doing a last frame on selling and trading gear? Joe, actually, I've talked about that a couple times in the last year about selling and trading gear. I talked about KEH. I talked about my experience with Robert's cameras. My advice to you, if you have questions, I know you're part of the TOGKnowledge community, post a question in there with specific questions, not generic questions, and we'll definitely be able to help you out. I will tell you that I am a huge fan of usedphotopro.com. They are part of Robert's Camera and absolutely awesome. I've sold a lot of gear through them. They've been very fair, made it super simple. So I would recommend that you check them out, okay? All right, gang. So all that being said, Joe Doozle, thank you. How about the like button? If you haven't done it yet, try it now. Seriously, gang, I hope this information helps you tonight. I hope if nothing else, you'll think about it, right? Gear's fun. We all love our toys. I'm every bit as guilty as anybody else, right? But at the end of the day, it gets expensive and it's not going to make you a better photographer. So look, it's all well and good to go buy something just for the fun of it, but know that you're buying it for the fun of it. Don't trick yourself into thinking that's going to make your pictures better, right? Okay, so now I'm officially out of time. Thanks for watching. Again, I hope you found some value in what I shared. Please remember, you're not getting any younger, which means you have less time than you did yesterday to go pick up that camera and shoot something. Because your best shot, it's your next shot. Adios, gang. Take care.